My wife, Cheryl, wants 6 months to discover who she really is. She's found another man, meeting him at Starbucks while I'm here in our empty home. I planned a romantic trip to France for us, but she wants independence. Her betrayal cuts deep, shattering the trust we've built over 25 years. As I cancel our joint accounts and prepare for divorce, the reality hits hard. How did we end up here? This is my side of the story, raw, real, and full of heartbreak. Marvin Johnson was coming home from work feeling very happy. It had been a good week, and he was hopeful for better days ahead. Marvin was the president and owner of Midwest Financial Services, a company that helped people with accounting, investments, and management in his county. While the business did not make a lot of money, it provided Marvin and his 20 employees with a decent income. This company meant a lot to his family. Marvin's great-grandfather, Nels Peter Johnson, helped to start this town. He came to the prairies from Oscar in Sweden in 1868 with his 5 kids. They worked the land with oxen and wooden plows. Marvin's grandfather was the youngest child and had a hard time working on the farm because he broke his leg in an accident. After 4 years of school, he found a job as a counterman and bookkeeper for a local store owner. At 22, he married Birgitta Olof's daughter, who was 18 at the time. 10 years later, when Marvin's father, Carl, was born, he started his own bookkeeping service after he came back from World War II. Over the years, many members of Marvin's family held important local roles like mayors, bank board members, and county commissioners. Helping the community and running a business was part of who they were. At the last stoplight before getting to his house, he looked at the seat next to him. There was his trusty briefcase and a bright red envelope that said, "A lifelong journey for the love of my life." Inside the envelope were plans and details for a 30-day trip to France. The dates weren't set yet, but Marvin had talked everything over with Betty, one of his oldest friends who owned a travel agency. They had a history together. They dated in 6th grade until she broke his heart by sitting with John Stanton on the swings during recess. Marvin didn't like the thought of her with someone else. They shared a kiss in their senior year when Marvin, the captain of the football team, crowned Betty as homecoming queen. He planned to call Betty after he talked to Cheryl tonight to decide on their travel dates. He knew Cheryl was already at home since she had called him earlier to see when he would be back. Marvin left town to go to college. He met Cheryl during his freshman year at a party for the sorority and fraternity. Even though he was new, they had fun together. Cheryl was studying French, while Marvin was focused on business, so they didn't share many classes. At that time, Marvin was already dating another girl from nursing school, so he didn't ask Cheryl out. But as their senior year began, they started spending more time together. During the spring, Cheryl would spend her weekends at Marvin's apartment. After graduation, he got a job at a local office of a big finance company. He chose to stay in town so he could be close to Cheryl. It was tough for a young man to leave college. There were many fun things to do on campus, like parties, football games, and hanging out with friends. Why would he want to leave? Marvin only had one reason. His father wanted him to come home and work in the family business. Marvin always knew this day would come. For the next year, every Friday, he would drive to Cheryl's house and return home on Sunday. Being a romantic, he bought her an engagement ring for Christmas. Their moms agreed that a wedding in June would be a great idea. Cheryl now works 2 jobs at a community college. One job she loves is teaching French, both for beginners and advanced students. Sometimes she helps with philosophy classes, especially when they talk about French topics. Since she studied French in college, Marvin often sees her reading French newspapers and magazines online at home. Her other job is helping people find jobs after they graduate and finding summer work. She has been at the college since their children were in 6th and 8th grades. Now, both kids have moved out, leaving Marvin and Cheryl in an empty house. He smiled as he looked at the home his grandparents gave him because he loved golf. It was just 1 block from the country club. It was a lovely house where they raised their children, made great friends, and lived happily. Today felt special because he had planned a trip for their 25th wedding anniversary. Their lives had been tough lately. The winter blues had made it hard to go out and enjoy life. Cheryl was feeling the empty nest syndrome since their son went to college and their daughter moved to Kansas City for work. Menopause had not been easy for Cheryl. It made her feel moody and frustrated. She was not the cheerful and loving young woman Marvin married 25 years ago. He hoped that a trip to France would bring back some joy for both of them. Cheryl had dreamed of this trip ever since her first French class in middle school. She wasn't the most popular girl, but she wasn't shy either. The boys in her school liked cars and sports. The most popular boys dated the popular girls, while the others just watched. Cheryl spent a lot of time learning French and dreamed of visiting France every night. Marvin opened the front door and saw Cheryl at the kitchen table. He smiled and said, "Good evening, dear. How are you on this nice February evening?" Cheryl looked up and answered blankly, "Hi, I thought you would come earlier. What's that big red envelope, don't you remember?" "Valentine's Day was a week ago," he said. "I planned to be here sooner, but I had an important job to do. I'm sorry for being late. The envelope is something I need to finish tonight." He put his briefcase on the coffee table in the living room, with the red envelope face down on top, and went to the kitchen table. Cheryl had already set up a bottle of red wine and 2 glasses on the table. It was clear she had a glass and was starting on the second one, pouring him a glass too. She asked, "How was your day?" It seemed like she was just trying to start a chat, but she didn't seem very interested in his answer. He started to talk, but then saw the pen and paper in front of her glass. He wondered if she was going to tell him what he did wrong this time. Instead, he said, "My day was fine. But looking at the list in front of you, it seems my evening will be more important than my day." Cheryl sighed and agreed. "Yes, that might be true. I've been thinking about my life and what I want to do for the rest of it. A lot has happened in the last few months that made me see this. At the end of this year, I will be hosting my sorority's 25th reunion. 2 of my friends from it recently passed away from breast cancer." She took a breath and said, "I've done my jobs as a mother, driver, nurse, judge, and counselor for our kids. Now, I just have to wait for the grandchildren to come along so I can see them for a couple of hours every month or 2. Cheryl looked him in the eye and said, "This brings me to our marriage." Marvin nodded, showing he was listening carefully. Cheryl continued, "This June will be our 25th wedding anniversary. That's a long time for 2 people to be together. Half of my sorority friends already have 2nd or 3rd husbands. Where do we go from here? What keeps us together? And more importantly, how will we stick together for the next 25 years? Where will the passion to keep our love alive come from?" Marvin felt his mind racing with thoughts that felt tricky. He had to choose his words carefully. He began, "I see what you mean. I have the same worries about my life. Some men go wild in middle age, buying flashy cars and chasing after younger girls. But I have a great wife and haven't fallen into that trap. What can I do to make the next half of our lives exciting and worth getting up for each day? If you have any ideas, please tell me, and I promise to do my best to make it happen." "That's exactly why I love you, Marvin," she said. "Many men don't pay attention to their wives' problems. They often think, it's your issue, you fix it. I've always lived under someone else's care. I grew up in my father's home. Then in college, I moved to a sorority house. After that, I came here to live in your home, the one your grandparents gave you for your wedding. I've always had someone looking after me. I was never on my own. Living with you has been fun, but lately it hasn't felt complete. I'm the wife of the Chamber of Commerce president, a church board member, and the country club president's wife. I'm just known as your wife. I feel like a small moon going around your big world. I need to break free from this routine or I'll lose myself. I love you so much, but I need some time for myself. You're a great husband, father, friend, and partner, but you are so amazing that there's no room for me in your shine. I need to go." She paused for a moment, then added, "I want to take a break, a 6-month time out. For those 6 months, I'll live somewhere else and we won't talk. It will be tough for both of us. I'll be thinking about you all the time. After 6 months, I'll come back and we can make a plan for the future. I want to be the fun girl you fell for in college. I know you've noticed I've been a bit moody lately. We might need to see a counselor, but I think some time apart is best for us." Marvin stuttered, "No contact? I think you should have some space, but cutting all ties seems too much. Our lives are so connected. How will that even work?" "It would be like we're not married," she replied. "We would go our own ways. We would have our own interests and experiences. I've been reading about new ideas that highlight different views of life. That's what I want to explore." I signed up for an online course about empowering women and changing the balance between men and women. I'm excited to start this new path, she went on. Our separation will feel like a divorce, but without any anger or mistrust. We'll be like lovers who are apart for 6 months. Military couples do this often and still get along well. You'll keep to yourself, and I'll be free to meet new people. He asked if you would act like a single woman and meet others. Would that mean dating other men? Cheryl smiled and said maybe, but I doubt anyone will want to take me out for dinner and a movie. He asked coldly, as a single woman who goes on dates. Will you do that on these dates? She casually replied, probably. How else can I have new experiences as a woman? My only experiences are with you. I want to be on the same level as you. You are getting your past experiences. Now it's my turn to gain experience so I can make you happy. You forgot one thing, Marvin said. We are married. I promised that all my future experiences would be with you. You made that promise too. I have stayed true to you and I expect you to do the same. She replied, well, let's see what happens in 6 months. We'll make our decision then, he responded. But there may not be a chance for you to come back to me. You might just keep living with someone else. Oh, don't be so dramatic. It's just sex. Nothing special, Cheryl replied. After 6 months without it with me, you'll be glad we're back together. Please don't worry about it. I'm trying to improve myself, and the confidence I'll gain from meeting other men will make me a better partner for you. I want to be happier in all parts of my life. After all, I'm not just a housewife like your grandmother. He said, 6 months without seeing each other sounds extreme. Maybe we can work through some of this with counseling, she replied. I don't want to just talk about it. I want to take action. It has to be a clean break, or I will keep depending on you and I won't be able to improve. It has to feel like we are not married anymore. This way I can return to our marriage with a better mindset. I don't know if I can deal with that, he replied. No, Marvin. We need to change my way of thinking quickly. I want to stress for 6 months, not drag this out for years. Let's get back to where we want to be as a couple as soon as we can. When do you plan to move out? He asked. She said, I have rented an apartment for 6 months and we will start moving things in this weekend. Marvin almost fell out of his chair. I was all he could say. Finally, he whispered, can we discuss this more before we make such a big change in our lives? She took his hand and said, thank you for talking to me about this. I believe it will improve our lives in the long run. I really appreciate you being kind and not acting mean, he said with a sigh. But I wish you wouldn't trust me so much. I don't get why you are doing this and I don't like it. It seems like this will happen whether I agree or not. My feelings don't seem to matter here. He needed a moment to think about what was going on. Your plan is making my head spin. I really don't know what to say or ask. I just feel confused. How about we talk about this in bed tomorrow night? She suggested. Will you join me, or is distance already starting between us? Not now, sweetheart. I need to focus on my move, but I do plan to be in bed with you tonight. Matt Marvin walked up the stairs to the bedroom and collapsed onto the bed. He was very tired, but found it hard to sleep. Too many questions were racing around in his mind, leaving him wide awake. He felt bad for Cheryl and what she was dealing with. Then he began to feel sorry for himself for not seeing her struggles earlier. If he had, maybe he could have stopped this breakup. Anger rose inside him. He had spent time and money planning a 30-day trip to France for her, and now she was thinking about ending their marriage. Later that night, Cheryl quietly climbed into bed and cuddled up to her husband's back. She lightly kissed his shoulder, and he felt her tears as she whispered, I'm really sorry, Marvin. He softly replied, I'm sorry too, Cheryl. I love you, she said. Is that the last time I'll hear that from you? He asked. Cheryl whispered, I want our lives to be better, not worse. After my trip, I want to come back as a better wife for you. In their 25-year relationship, Marvin usually woke up after everyone else. Today was no different. Instead of bringing coffee to Cheryl in bed, which she loved, he went to the front door, took his briefcase from the coffee table, slipped a red envelope inside, and left. He texted his good friend Roger, who owned a car dealership, to see if he could stop by around 7 in the morning, knowing Roger would be there early. Marvin remembered that both Roger and his brother Dan had gone through divorces, and he needed their advice. After telling Cheryl that she wanted to leave to find herself, he glanced at Roger, feeling lost. Roger said, "It sounds like she might already have a boyfriend, but she's not ready to fully commit to him yet. She wants to have fun with him before making big choices. If she's happy 6 months from now, she might break up with you. If he doesn't suit her, she could come back to you and say, 'I'm back. I'm ready to love you again.' You are a safe choice for her. She can use what she has with you to see if her new relationship is better without much risk." Marvin asked, "How can I protect myself from being used?" "Dump her, and do it quickly," Roger replied. "Take control. You need to make the choices. The day she moves out, you should file for divorce because she left you. The divorce will take about 6 months no matter what happens. If she leaves you, the divorce can be finished quickly. But if you want her back, just don't sign the final papers, and you will stay married. What matters is that you decide what to do with her, not the other way around. If she cheats and you let her come back, she may cheat again. Here's another tip. Stay the nice guy. You are. Don't yell at her. That can only make things harder for both of you later on, in your relationship and in court. Act like you understand her plans. If she doesn't have a boyfriend, it will be easier to fix your problems. If you treat her badly, it will be tough for her to come back to you. If she doesn't cheat but you do, that will cause big issues in your marriage. She might want revenge, and that will just make things worse. You two make a good couple. I want you to fix this marriage, not ruin it." "Good advice, Roger. I knew you could help me," Marvin said. "Anytime, brother. You know how to protect the bank accounts before she touches them, right? Also, gather any messages and emails from her devices. This will help you see if she's chatting with someone else," Roger suggested, as he walked Marvin out of the building. Marvin saw a black BMW 432 convertible parked in the lot. He asked Roger if it was his car. "So far, yes," Roger said. "I got a nice deal at the used car auction because the buyers weren't paying attention." "Great, I'll take it. Does it need work? If not, have your team clean it up and I'll pick it up tomorrow. Just give me a fair price," Marvin replied. As Marvin looked at his own car, Roger asked, "Are you switching from a Honda?" "Yeah, I plan to drive more this year," Marvin answered. He went to his office to check what needed to be done that day. He thought everything could wait a few days, so he told his staff he would be home to handle a personal issue but was available if they needed him. On his way home, he saw Betty's car outside a travel agency. He stopped to talk about their canceled trip to Paris. When Betty saw Marvin, she jumped up and excitedly said, "How do you like the surprise in the red envelope?" He tried to stay calm and replied, "Cheryl said she's leaving me. She is moving out this weekend, so there won't be a trip to France. How much do I owe you for all the work I did on this nice package?" Betty sat down in her chair and shook her head. No, it can't be," she said. "Cheryl never says anything bad about you. She really cares for you." "I don't know what to say. I'm really sorry." "What happened?" I asked. "She says she needs space to figure out who she is, not just as your wife, but as her own person. Those are her words, not mine. It's like she has someone else to be with while I'm gone." "Betty, she's one of your good friends. Has she told you if she has someone else?" I asked. Betty thought for a moment and said, "She did mention a new young guy in the counseling department. That was all she said. She never talked about him again or even said his name. And about the cost, you don't owe me anything." "I learned a lot from this trip. It will help me with my other clients," he said. "Please don't tell her the trip is off. It was supposed to be a surprise. I'm the only one shocked, I guess." As he got in the car, he noticed his phone buzzing like a bee. It had been off all morning, and now there were calls and messages for him. All the messages were from Cheryl. "Please call me." Following Roger's advice, he called her. She picked up right away. "Marvin, honey, where are you? I missed you so much this morning. Can you talk now?" "Good morning, Cheryl. I have a lot on my mind. After our talk yesterday, I thought a drive would help," he replied. She said, "I can take the day off and talk now if you'd like. I know I worried you last night, and I'm worried about my wonderful husband, too. Tell me what you want to do. Should we meet now, for lunch or dinner? I need you with me because I'm scared about what I want to do." "I need your advice, please, Marvin," she added. He felt a bit upset with her caring about him and said softly, "I need more time to think about your plans for divorce. I'm going to the office to close the door, turn off my phone, and think about what's next. Let's plan to have dinner tonight at the usual time and talk more then. I'll pick up some food so you don't have to cook or clean. Is that okay with you?" he asked. She replied happily, "That sounds great. I can't wait to see you. I love you." "I love you too," he found himself saying before he could stop himself. His next stop was the bank. He paid off the shared credit cards from their checking account and canceled them. He split the travel and Christmas savings into 2 envelopes. The last step was to close their shared checking account. He opened a new account in his name and put half of the money in it. Cheryl would get her half in cash tonight. Marvin drove by the junior college to check if Cheryl's car was in the parking lot. He left his business card on her windshield that said, "I look forward to seeing you tonight." He remembered Roger's advice, be kind until things get hard. So far, she hadn't been unfaithful. At home, Marvin started gathering the information he needed. He knew that Cheryl kept her passwords in a small book in her desk. He looked at all her emails, received, sent, deleted, and saved, without finding anyone who seemed special to her. He made a copy of her contact list, searching for clues. He checked every file that had been used in the last 2 months. He reviewed her web search history but didn't find anything unusual. There were some articles in women's magazines about how to rebuild self-esteem after feeling small next to someone you love. He marked those articles to understand what Cheryl might be thinking. Cheryl's cell phone was part of a package that included internet and cable TV. Marvin easily got all her messages from the past 60 days and noted down the numbers she called most often. The 5 most frequent messages were from people on her contact list. The only name he didn't recognize was Roberto. Marvin left the house and went back to the office to write down his worries and thoughts for the most important meeting of his life. Around noon, when he drove up to the house, he saw Cheryl's car in the garage. He walked to the front door, remembering Roger's words to be nice until it gets too hard. When he opened the door, Cheryl came toward him holding a glass of wine. She looked at him and said, "I heard the garage door open and I couldn't wait to hug you." She wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him. He kissed her back, enjoying the first warmth he had felt in months. She pulled away and asked, "Why did you buy an 18-inch pizza? You can't eat that much in one night." "I know," he replied. "Leftovers are how I'll start feeding myself at night." "Oh, I forgot how much your life would change," she said. They had their first glass of wine and a slice of pizza while talking about their day and what was happening in town. To break the ice, Marvin asked, "Tell me about the apartment you rented." Cheryl replied, "It's a 1,200 square foot 2-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of a new building being built north of Neely on 46th Street. It has a parking garage, a clubhouse, and a pool. It's the best building in the 5-story complex. They wanted a quick deal, so I got a good price for 6 months' rent. They think all the buildings will be done in 6 months, and then they can start charging higher rents. But right now, they need money coming in. I'll be back in this house by then." He said she was smart with money. "Cheryl, is the house filled with furniture?" She scrunched her nose and said no. "I might have to rent furniture for 6 months," she added. He suggested, "Take what you need from this house. There's too much here for me. Take the bedroom furniture since you have a special mattress for your back. Also, take the TV. You're the only one who watches it in bed. We can find other furniture so you won't have to take too much." Smiling, she said, "Thank you for being so nice. You really are a great person." He almost replied with a sarcastic comment about how being nice got him a wife leaving, but kept quiet instead. He then said, "I don't think you can fit all your things into a small apartment. What will you do with the rest?" She frowned and said, "Yeah, I've thought about that too. I guess I'll have to leave the extra stuff here for now." Marvin replied, "That won't work if everyone is leaving. You can't have that stuff here when you're starting over." She pleaded, "I have nowhere to put it. My apartment is too small for everything here. Why can't I leave some things here? I'll be back in 6 months. It won't hurt to leave them here." But he answered, "You're leaving. And with you, your things must go too. I don't want reminders of you having fun with other people. It makes me feel bad." She replied coldly, "You can be nice about giving me a bed, yet you're being rude about my things. What am I supposed to do with my stuff other than leave it here? Since you want to be on your own, why are you asking me? You're leaving me for that reason, but now you need my help? You can rent a storage space. They're all over the city." Then she asked, "Who's going to move my stuff to the apartment?" "You have a pickup truck in your garage. I thought you could help move my things," he said. "There you go again," she replied. You want to get away from me, yet you expect me to do everything for you. If you leave, you won't get my help for moving or storage." He offered, "Let's make a deal. If you move back into this house, I'll help you move back in if we agree on things." "What do you mean, make a deal?" she snapped. "It's clear I'll come back here. Where else would I go? My plan is to return here as a better wife and a more confident person for you. That should set us up well for the next 25 years, he said. "Many things can change your plan," he added. "You might get very fond of one of your new boyfriends. You may want to pretend to be a happy couple for 6 months, a year, or even 2 years. I will wait for you patiently. Or you could have so much fun with a lot of guys that I will feel like I'm just second best. No good guy wants a woman who plays around with many men to be his wife. While you are out enjoying yourself, do you really think I will just sit around and wait for you to come back and fix our marriage? That is not going to happen, Cheryl." After our first talk about this, I took some time to think about myself. Since my wife is not here, maybe I should find someone new. "What does that mean?" she asked. Marvin explained it simply. Just like if your car gets old and doesn't work anymore, you can trade it for a newer one. I also want to find a younger and more exciting wife, not an older one. Marvin wanted to say he wanted a younger, thinner, and prettier wife, but he thought better of it. "Look, Buster," she snapped, "I'm trying to better myself for you. You don't need to find a new wife." "I don't like that idea at all," he said softly. "And I don't like your idea either. But you told me I had no choice in what you were doing. You were going to go through with it no matter what I said. You didn't think about how I would feel about having a wife who cheats. So while you do what you want, I will do what I want for 6 months. Let's see how this turns out." Cheryl said, "It's not the same. I look at other men for fun. I look to you for closeness. My connections with other men are just physical." She added, "Being close means loving each other deeply. We already have that bond, and it will still be there when I come back. You can't do this, Marvin. You just can't. I need you to be there for me when the 6 months are done. Thanks for making me your second choice if things don't work out for you. You can stop me from leaving if you don't move out. If you move out, I will think of myself as single, just like you are with your likely dates." Cheryl worried this was not going how it should. A husband should care about his wife's needs and let her explore new things. To change the subject, Marvin handed her a big envelope and said, "I used our shared bank account to pay off our credit cards and then closed them. I also closed all of our joint accounts. Your half of the money is in this envelope, along with half of what we had saved. You will need to open new accounts to get your cash. I haven't touched the credit cards that are just in your name. You're making this too difficult for me. I just want to give you some time." "It's not that big of a deal," he replied. "But it is a big deal to me. When a wife leaves her husband, it's very serious. While we sort out the details of our breakup, you need to get health insurance from a community college. My plan will cover you until the end of the month, but you should take care of it soon." He continued speaking. "You wanted to stand on your own 2 feet and do things by yourself. That's what grown-ups do when they are alone. There won't be a man there to help you when you need it. You said you wanted space from me to grow and have new experiences." Cheryl frowned and asked, "Are you going to keep putting me down, or will you hold off on that for now?" He replied seriously, "Yes. There's one more thing, and it's probably the hardest part. The day after you move out, I will file for divorce because you've been in this situation before. You hurt me deeply. Let me finish." He sighed and said, "You want 6 months to explore? A divorce will take at least 6 months. At that time, you were supposed to finish your self-discovery journey. If we agree to be together again, we can stop the divorce process. We won't sign anything official, and we will stay married. If you find someone new and want to move on, then we will sign the divorce, and neither of us will have to wait any longer. That said, I want to tell you again, I don't want to divorce you. I love you, and I want you to stay with me. I want to grow old with you. But I won't just watch you move on with someone else without finishing the divorce. I want it to be clear. I don't want to be seen as the man who sits at home while you date others. Do you see where I'm coming from?" She quickly replied. "No one will know who I'm with, or even if I'm with anyone at all. No one will ever find out." He replied immediately, "Just like no one will know that you and Roberto have gone out for lunch a couple of times a week. Do you understand me?" Cheryl said. "I had no reason to follow you. People just said they saw you with a young Hispanic man. I think it was Roberto. Wasn't it him?" Ignoring him, Cheryl scoffed. "You're such a jerk, an absolute jerk. I'm trying to do better, and you're making this so hard. It's just not fair. I guess it's right for me to move on from someone like you, Marvin Johnson." With that, she stormed out of the house, slammed the door, and drove off. He thought, typical. When she doesn't get her way and can't talk anymore, she just leaves. This time she might not come back for a while, and if she doesn't, that's fine because she was going to go anyway. Marvin spent the rest of the night taking down pictures from the walls. He carefully packed up all the photos of his wife, hoping she would come to realize what she was doing. He didn't want to create a problem that couldn't be fixed. The box held their wedding pictures and album, along with other keepsakes he wanted to keep safe. He was careful to pack these things away so the movers wouldn't mix them up with his other stuff. The house felt empty and cold, with boxes of photos lined up against the living room wall. He was also glad she thought it was kind of him to turn down the bedroom furniture. It wasn't kindness, he thought. Her favorite furniture didn't fit the style of their home at all. He was just happy to see it go. It hurt when she called him a jerk. He didn't want to seem uncaring. He really didn't want her to leave, but he also didn't plan to end their marriage. He couldn't let her go out with other guys and then return to him as if everything was fine. The thought of sitting at a club while one of her old flames asked her to dance made him uneasy. He could picture himself just a few miles away at a supermarket with a flower shop inside. So he jumped into his Honda, sped to the store, and bought a dozen long-stemmed roses. He placed them where she would notice them right away, hoping they would help calm things down. Later that evening, he heard the garage door open, and then the car door slam shut. The front door opened hard, and she walked in with purpose. Marvin was watching the news and looked up to greet her. "Good evening, dear." A moment later, he heard her say, "What beautiful flowers. Are those for me?" "Of course they are," he replied with a smile. "You're the only one here who deserves them." He felt a sense of relief as she expressed her gratitude. "I was worried we would argue again as soon as I walked in." He wasn't comfortable with how their last talk ended and wanted to shift the mood. "While you think about your plans, we need to talk about your time with someone else. Is that okay with you?" She agreed, but mentioned, "Aren't you curious where I was?" "I just want to know you're safe," he said. "I was safe at Starbucks, thinking about what to do next. I have a lot on my mind. Decisions that could change my life forever. I know what I want, but I'm scared of the results." "I'd love for you to stay here as long as you want," he replied. "Actually, I wish it could be forever. You're the sweetest person ever. I really love you." "I love you too," she said. "Your idea just gave me a thought. Here's a simpler version of your text with a clearer narrative style, while keeping the emotional tone. I think if you let me think this through, we can agree on how to move forward. For now, you have time to move or put your things somewhere safe. This will help me learn how everything works in this house, like the stove and the dishwasher." He wanted to take his time with the ending of their relationship and be in charge of it. She said, "I want to talk more about this." And he replied, "Can we wait until tomorrow night to continue?" "Yes, please," she answered. "I'll clean the kitchen and you can go to bed." The next morning, he woke up at his usual time, made coffee, and brought it to her. "Good morning, love," he said, placing the coffee on the nightstand and touching her shoulder. She turned onto her back, smiled widely, and said, "Good morning, my amazing husband." Marvin got ready for work while Cheryl took the day off. He hoped she was thinking twice about leaving him. She planned to call moving companies and find storage places. The first thing she needed to do was talk to a lawyer. She knew she couldn't use a family lawyer because Marvin had likely already spoken to one. She managed to get an appointment for half an hour at 3:30. She needed to visit the bank to open accounts in her name. She was still thinking about leaving, but wanted to get everything set up in case she decided to stay. The idea of leaving was still tempting, but it would create some long-term issues. Attorney Dan Parks let Cheryl into his office at 3:30 and said to be quick because he had a big meeting at 4. She told him she was planning to leave for 6 months to build her confidence. After that time, she thought she might return to her husband, but he had said that might not work for her. It depended on whether she talked to someone else. She mentioned that Marvin would file for divorce as soon as she moved out. Dan said Marvin's way of sharing bills was fair. He had seen worse. According to her, their talks were friendly and there was no violence. When Dan asked if she loved Marvin, she replied, "Yes, I love him very much." "Does he say he loves you?" he asked. "Yes, he shows it a lot. He gets upset when I have fun with other men. He just can't accept it. I think it's unfair." Dan responded that many men felt that way, especially those who didn't cheat on their wives. They often made good spouses in the divorces he dealt with. "The reason for divorce is often cheating," she argued. "But that's different. I want to enjoy time with other men so I can feel better about myself as a woman. I have only been with one man my whole life. In 6 months, I'll be back with Marvin just like before," Dan said. "That doesn't matter. Cheating is cheating, no matter why or when it happens. Marvin is being nice by not asking for a divorce over the cheating. That would be really embarrassing for you. Cheryl, if you decide to get divorced, I would be happy to help you as your lawyer. I will make sure your rights are protected. Right now, Marvin seems to be acting like a good man." After she finished her work, she went home and was surprised to see a black BMW convertible in the driveway. She wondered whose car it was and why Marvin wasn't around. The BMW was empty, and the garage door was open. She carefully went into the kitchen and saw her husband taking a beer from the fridge. She asked, "Whose car is in the driveway?" He answered, "That's my car. I got rid of the Honda and traded it for this BMW." Hearing the word traded made her feel uneasy. She said, "I didn't know you wanted to get rid of the Honda. I thought you liked that car." He replied, "I did, but it just felt that way to me." She hesitated and then asked, "Where did you get the money for such a nice car? We always talked about big decisions together." As soon as she said it, she felt embarrassed. She realized she was doing the same thing she had just criticized him for. She felt like a hypocrite. Before he could point it out, she quickly said, "That sounds bad, especially after what I did this week. I'm sorry for coming down on you. What I did was much worse." He replied firmly, "I guess we have different rules. As for the money, I sold the Honda and took some from a special savings account for a project that didn't work out. I had some extra cash, so I used it to buy the car. It's nice, isn't it?" She wanted to change the topic. "The living room looks different. Did you take the pictures down to clean?" He replied, "No, your pictures are in a box in the hallway waiting for a new place. If you leave, I'll fix the holes and repaint the wall if you want. I'll hang the pictures back up if you stay. Otherwise, I'll change the wall how I want." She didn't like him changing the house. That felt like something a wife should do. Instead of calling him out on it, she said, "Can we talk for a minute? I spent time with Dan Parks today. He told me you would be fair if you decided to get a divorce. Marvin, I appreciate that you are such a good man. You deserve better than how I've treated you. He mentioned he would help her if she filed for divorce. But I don't want you to divorce me." After thinking about this all day, I made up my mind. I want to move into this apartment and try a new life for 6 months. Last night, when I was leaving, something nice happened. A kind man saw I was upset and bought me a latte at Starbucks. We talked for a while. He asked me to come to his house for a drink, but I said no. I was scared. I just wanted someone to talk to. I showed myself that I could be around men without anything else happening. Then I quickly said, "Since you're worried about me meeting other men, I promise to try my best not to get involved with anyone on my break from marriage. You have supported me a lot with this." Even Dan spoke up. He told me to make the right choice because I have a good relationship with my husband. It would be sad to ruin it. She sat up straight and said, "I have movers coming in 2 days to help me with my things. I'll give you my new address so you can send any mail or divorce papers there. We can take turns calling the kids. I know they'll be upset with me. Marvin, everything will be okay. It will be hard at first, but we have been through tough times before and got stronger together. I believe we will do that again. Please remember that I love you. In 6 months and 1 day, I will love you just as much as I do now." He thought for a moment before responding. "I thought we would take it slow, but this is your choice. I wanted to mention it later, but now I must tell you to please not invite my friends from the golf club to hang out. Being with them could ruin our chances of getting back together. Also," he added, "after our divorce, you won't be on the country club list anymore. You can visit as a guest with your women's group, but you need someone to take you. You can't take anything out of the club. If I'm there when you visit, I'll treat you well, and I hope you do the same." He slowly stood up and said, "I hope you enjoy your new life." With that, he turned and walked to the bedroom, quietly closed the door and went to the bathroom where he got sick. Cheryl sat on the couch trying to wipe her tears with a handkerchief. She had worked for months thinking this would be fun. She dreamed of dancing in her new life, knowing Marvin, her rock, would be there to catch her if she fell, just like he had done for 25 years. She wanted it so much, but now it all felt very risky. She didn't see it coming. She thought of herself as a strong American, ready to face the world on her own. But she was still crying. She tried to sleep in the guest room, but it didn't work. There were too many memories of her husband, and her kids in that house. All those memories felt like ghosts, asking her one question. Why, Cheryl, why? And she had no good answer. She got up several times that night and went to the main bedroom door. She felt startled, then went back in. She heard him making coffee and wished he would bring her a cup, sit with her, and say everything would be okay. But instead, she heard a door slam and his car drive away. The car he had just changed. It hit her that this was his way of showing he might want to change his relationship if she left. She was scared he would trade her for a younger woman while she figured things out. What would happen to her then? How could she find a younger, better-looking man? That seemed unlikely. Maybe a man in his 60s would trade with her. Maybe some man worried about her spending his money and wanting her home by 9:30 p.m. to watch the news. When Marvin got to work, it was dark outside, and his mood matched. He opened his computer and started making lists, calendars, and deadlines. After a night of pain, he decided to make up for the years he lost. He wanted to do things he had missed because his now soon-to-be ex-wife didn't want him to. He planned to take more golf lessons from a pro. He was 10 strokes away from a better score. He bought a box of fancy cigars to smoke on the back porch. He thought he could even smoke inside. He wouldn't have to waste boring Sundays with her sister. He started to think about how to enjoy life more like Cheryl would. She wouldn't break his spirit by leaving him. Instead, she would make it stronger. Cheryl spent the day packing and getting ready to move. It was hard to decide what to take to her new apartment and what to put in storage. These were things that mattered to her, but she had to choose to fit into her new life. She was happy when Marvin called and asked her to dinner that night. At 6 o'clock that evening, Marvin pulled up to the house in his nice new clothes and wool hat. He opened the door of the BMW for Cheryl, just like he did when they first started dating. Even though it was cold, he put the top down, and they zoomed down the block to a new French restaurant where they had a wonderful dinner. It was great because they focused on light topics. The important conversations had already been discussed or were too hard to talk about. He lowered the roof of the car, and they enjoyed the long drive home, both excited about their last night together. There was no cold silence between them, but when they arrived home, they didn't have much to say. She asked him to sit down with her for a bit. She started their talk like this. I want to thank you for being kind about my wish to change how I look. You didn't shout or try to stop me from making this choice. I'm sorry for calling you names earlier this week. I was upset, and you have been very patient with me. He nodded and said, I appreciate that. The reason I didn't get angry is that the gap between us has been getting bigger for the last year. We don't feel as close as we used to. You have seemed distracted and distant. I tried many things to bring us back together, but nothing worked. Now you have to find your own happiness. I hope this time apart will help you find joy again. I want us to be together, but I'm not sure that will happen. That's why I will start the divorce process tomorrow. I don't see us being a couple again. If you plan to act like you are single, she said, you are a very forgiving person. You always have been. Think about when Molly had fun with her boss on a work trip. Tom forgave her, and now they are happy again. We can fix things too, he replied. In your story, you missed some facts. Molly and her boss were drunk and celebrating something big. They didn't mean for it to happen, but you wanted to go out with someone else. You went against my wishes and our promises to be faithful. It feels like you wanted to make me look bad to feel better about yourself. This hurts my feelings. I don't want to wait another 6 months for a divorce after you come back. You want to have fun with someone else and then end our marriage. It's that simple. When we meet again in 6 months, I'll ask you if you were true to me, and I expect you to tell me the truth. I won't hire someone to follow you or listen in on your phone calls. The truth will always come out. You have to promise me. Without trust, there is no marriage. Cheryl replied sharply. You think I'm going to have fun with someone? That's not my plan. But if it happens, we'll deal with it when we meet again. Ending 25 years of our life together because I needed excitement for one night is not fair. I really want to remain your wife for the next 25 years, but I think we need to be apart for a while so I can feel good about myself again. I'm sorry we didn't see eye to eye on this, ma'am. Marvin kissed her goodnight at the door of the guest room and went to the master bedroom alone. The bed he shared with her was about to leave the house, as was Cheryl's. The next morning, he woke up as usual, got dressed, made coffee, and, maybe for the last time, offered the cup to Cheryl. She hugged him tightly and told him how much she loved him. She wrapped her arms around his neck and said, Marvin, my love, I will be back in 6 months to finish our love story. He nodded and went to work. He didn't know why, but he felt lost. Later that morning, Cheryl walked around the house with a box of tissues while all her things were packed into boxes and loaded onto a truck. The movers had seen this kind of sadness before. It often happened when people faced big changes like divorces, deaths, or job losses. Marvin took all his clothes from the dressers so Cheryl wouldn't have to do it. They loaded up the closet first. The rest would go to her new apartment for $100 a month. She hadn't planned for that. As she walked out the door, she wondered if she would ever come back to this house. She figured she would find out in 6 months, week 1 of 26. After the movers put all of Cheryl's things in their new spots, she sat on a crate. She had to make a tough call to her children to tell them she had left their father for a new adventure. She and her daughter Cindy had always been close, so she called Cindy first. Cindy answered with a bright, "Hi, Mom." After some small talk, Cheryl got to the hard part. She said, "Cindy, I left home to work on myself and become a better woman. You could say I'm becoming Cheryl 2.0. I plan to come back to your father in 6 months as a changed woman. It will be hard on both of us, but I believe it's the best choice." Cindy asked, "Does Dad think this is for the best?" "No," Cheryl replied. "He plans to file for divorce on Monday morning because he feels I abandoned him." Cindy gasped, "What have you done, Mom? This is unbelievable. Why would you do this?" Cheryl explained, "I've been reading about women who feel lost supporting their successful husbands. This plan helps me stand on my own with your father." She continued, "He's scared that if I meet new people, I will start enjoying myself too much. I told him that finding new relationships is not my main goal right now. It could happen, but I'm not looking for that. If it does happen, I would only want it for fun, not for a deeper connection. I'll save that kind of closeness for your father. He shouldn't be so worried about what I'm doing. He doesn't understand this like I do. He is getting a divorce because he doesn't want to look married to me while I'm on my own and maybe dating other guys. That's such an old-fashioned way of thinking," Cindy said. "I hope you see what you're doing. If you keep this silly plan, you'll have many dates but no real connection. Daddy won't stand for it and we'll end up divorced." Changing the subject, Cindy asked, "Now that you're acting single, how will that change your plans to go to France?" "What plans? I don't know anything about any plans," Cheryl replied. Cindy winced. "You mean to say you made plans to leave him while he was setting up an amazing trip for you? Betty, Daddy and I have spent months getting this trip ready. He even rented an apartment by the lake for 30 days with a view of the Eiffel Tower. He even arranged time off with your boss. You probably gave him the crazy idea before he told you about the trip." Cheryl turned pale when she heard, "Oh no, I had no idea. Why didn't he tell me anything?" "I would have waited to separate," Cindy answered. "You messed up your marriage before he could give you that gift. If you did this to me, I would have reminded you of that canceled trip all the time. I would have shown you how foolish you were. Daddy is not like that. He's a good man. You treat him poorly and he doesn't attack you. Mom, you can have fun with a lot of guys, but you will never find a man as good as the one you're pushing away with your words." Cindy ended the talk, leaving Cheryl in shock. They had always been close friends. She needed to call Marvin and ask about this surprising trip. After dialing his number many times and not getting through, she thought she might be blocked. Maybe he was also sending her emails to spam. On Friday evening, while she was preparing dinner, there was a knock on the door. When she opened it, a man asked, "Are you Cheryl Johnson?" When she said yes, he handed her a brown envelope and said, "You have been served." Before he left, he quickly took a picture of her. She thought, 25 years together, and I get just a brown envelope. Luckily, this is only for 6 months. Otherwise, it would be really bad. In the second week, Cheryl went through her contacts and called Betty at the travel agency. "Hi, Cheryl. I was expecting your call," Betty said. "Is it true that Marvin has set up a 30-day trip to Paris?" Betty replied with excitement. "Yes, it's the most romantic and special trip I have ever planned. You would have been amazed by what he set up. It's such a shame you will miss it." Cheryl asked, "How could he plan all of this without telling me? Did he hold a grudge against me?" Betty said sharply. "What do you think? He put in so much time, effort, and money to do something special for the most important person in his life. But instead, she tells him she's leaving to have fun with someone else. Cheryl, you are one of my best friends. I don't like talking to you about this, but I just don't get what you did. Please don't try to explain. I don't want to know. By the end of this silly 6 months, you'll be lining up for a date with your ex-husband. We're still friends, so let's just forget about it." After the call, she drove to Marvin's house. His BMW was parked outside, so she went inside. She saw Karen, his secretary, and said, "Hello, Karen, can I talk to Marvin?" Karen looked shy and said, "Marvin isn't home right now, but I saw his car out front." Cheryl felt like everyone in the office was watching her. They were curious about what would happen next. These were people she knew and liked to hang out with at company parties. She thanked Karen and turned to leave. She heard Karen say softly, "Goodbye, Cheryl." So this is what not being able to talk face-to-face feels like, she thought. She felt like she was losing control. Sitting in her car and looking at Marvin's BMW, she called her son Robbie. He always picked up, even if he was in class. He would just say he would call back. This time, there was no answer, so she left a message on his voicemail and drove home. After Cheryl left the office, Marvin came out to thank Karen for covering for him. "I know it was tough to lie to her, but arguing with Cheryl in the office would not have been good. Thanks for helping to avoid an awkward situation." A week later, Marvin's house looked more like a sports bar than a family home. Posters with motivational quotes were on the cupboard doors. The calendar on the wall was full of game times, golf lessons, and plans to hang out with his friends after work. Pictures of golf courses took the place of photos of Marvin and Cheryl on vacation. He got so caught up in work that he didn't come home anymore, not even when Cheryl wanted him there. Notes on the fridge reminded him of the meals he loved, like barbecue and Chinese food, which Cheryl didn't like at all. He looked forward to grilling steaks and eating melon on the patio, not caring if the juice spilled. Cheryl liked a quiet house when she was home. She had a stereo system that played jazz, Margaritaville, and reggae, depending on her mood. He also bought new, tougher-looking bedroom furniture instead of the soft styles Cheryl liked. There was a big body pillow for him to hug until he felt better. 2 weeks after doing what he wanted, Marvin noticed his house was messy. He called the job office at the junior college on a day when Cheryl wasn't there. He knew all the staff since his wife worked there part-time. He asked Mary, the manager, if she could find a nice student who could come over to clean for him. Mary playfully teased him, saying he had lost his housekeeper. Marvin smiled at the joke and told her that the new girl would cost much less than the last one. That made Mary laugh, and she was glad he still had his sense of humor. Marvin knew Cheryl would soon hear about it. Every day, Cheryl left a message for Robbie to call her back. In the next few weeks, Marvin and Cheryl went on with their lives, but things had changed. Cheryl was taking classes, but she felt uncomfortable around the feminist classmates, who seemed to dislike men more than they supported women. This week was also the first marriage counseling session as part of their divorce process. Marvin thought it would be useless because Cheryl was very firm about wanting her freedom and wouldn't compromise. He went to his first session with the counselor, Diane. After some small talk, Diane asked Marvin if he loved his wife. He said, "Absolutely." Then she asked if he thought Cheryl loved him. He replied that she did. But then the counselor asked, "So why are you getting a divorce?" He explained, "She took her things and told me not to contact her for 6 months. She wants to act like she's single and date other men." Marvin added, "To me that sounds like she doesn't want to be married anymore. That's why I filed for divorce." When Diane asked how he felt, Marvin looked straight at her and replied, "What a silly question. How do you think I feel? If you want to know if I'm violent, I can assure you I'm not. I love her and would never hurt her." "She is a good person," he said, "but she seems confused about who she is and what she wants." He was getting more frustrated. "The problem is she's stepping into danger thinking everything will turn out fine. I hope we can get back together, but I'll keep going while she thinks deeply about her choices." Diane then asked about the day he filed for divorce, which was right after Valentine's Day. Marvin shared, "I spent a lot of money that day. I bought 24 red roses, her favorite chocolates, and dinner at a fancy place for $200. It was hard to get her to join me. She gave me a card with sweet words in it, but it felt like it was written by someone else. She just signed it Love C. We went to bed, and I got a kiss that lasted only a moment. She turned her back to me and said goodnight. Looking back now, I see that I lost her along the way. I get why she wants to leave and why she isn't excited about our future. If that's how she feels, I'll be more certain about moving forward with the divorce," Diane thought. "This is tough. I should be helping to bring these people together, not pulling them apart. My job just became harder." It was week 7. Cheryl came to Diane Marco's office for a meeting to see if they could fix things. Diane asked her the same question she had asked Marvin. Cheryl gave the same answers as Marvin until they reached the question about why they were getting a divorce. Cheryl said, "I don't want a divorce. I told Marvin I would come back to him in 6 months and we could restart our life together. I just want to feel free. When I was younger, I didn't get to do what I wanted. I'm not getting younger or nicer looking. All my friends have exciting lives and I don't. Is that too much to ask?" Diane asked her about Valentine's Day. Cheryl said, "Nothing special. Just like everyone else. A few flowers and dinner. Nothing special." Then Diane said, "Cheryl, Marvin said he only wants a divorce if you want to be with other men. He loves you and wants to spend his life with you. Can you forget about being with other men to save your marriage?" Cheryl replied, "I don't get why he is being so demanding. I plan to return to him in 6 months. He would like the newer, more experienced version of me. We can go back to being the loving couple we used to be." It was week 8. Marvin was on the junior college alumni board and was creating a plan for a fundraiser to share at the next meeting. He called Tara Wilson, the head of the Alumni Association, to set up a meeting. He could have emailed the plans to her, but she was too nice to only talk to over email. When he arrived at her office, she greeted him with a bright smile and a warm voice. "I'm glad to see you again. I wanted to talk about some of these matters with you," she said. After they talked about the fundraiser, Tara said, "I don't want to meddle, but I heard you are divorcing Cheryl. I understand your situation. I was in a similar spot 2 years ago, and I still feel hurt when certain things pop up. Do you still talk to each other?" "No," he answered. "We ended things smoothly, but she doesn't want to talk as she figures out her life. There was no cheating or drinking problems. We were just growing apart." She continued, "I know this may feel weird, but I have a problem you might help with. There is a formal charity dinner this Saturday night I need to go to. I bought 2 tickets thinking my boyfriend would come with me, but he's no longer in the picture. My problem is Patrick O'Kelly. He is rude and bothers me. When he sees an empty seat next to me, he sits down and spoils my night. I can't push him away because he helps fund the local junior college. You're the only one in town who can keep him away from me. Could you help me with this? Maybe by pretending to be my boyfriend? If that's not something you want to do, I totally get it. He said he would be happy to take me out to dinner and keep me safe from Oakley's handyman. Just tell me where and when, and I will come by. I guess I should wear a nice suit." Tara took his hand, not to shake it, but as a friend, and said thanks a lot. Cheryl was still upset about the canceled trip to Paris. She thought, Marvin can be so romantic, but sometimes I wish he would think more about what I want. She had met a nice guy at Starbucks, and they had gone to lunch together a few times, but it was clear to Cheryl that their friendship wouldn't grow without more. She felt it was too soon to cheat. On Saturday night, Marvin drove up to the terrace house in a clean BMW and a sharp tuxedo. After he rang the doorbell, a young man opened it and said politely, "Please come in, Mr. Johnson. My mom will be here soon." Marvin smiled and said, "Thanks. It was your mom who gave you the script to read to me." The young man grinned and said yes. As they laughed, the most beautiful woman came into the room. This was not the Tara he knew from junior college work. She wore a bright blue dress with thin straps. Marvin paused and said, "Tara, I didn't recognize you. You look amazing." She answered, "You know how to make a girl feel special, don't you?" He replied, "Let's get you into my car quickly. I worry a movie star will come and take my lovely date away." She turned to her son and said, "Sean, behave. No visitors tonight. Go to bed by 10 p.m., okay?" Sean nodded, smiling at her, and said, "You look great, Mom." Everyone in town came out for the event that night. Heads turned as Tara and Marvin walked into the hall toward their reserved table. Marvin knew the men who approached their table were not there to talk to him. He had played golf with them that morning. Nothing had changed, except now he was with the most beautiful woman in the room. Marvin also caught the eye of several divorced women who had heard about his upcoming divorce. He moved around the hall, checking in with his clients and potential ones, while keeping an eye on Tara. Suddenly, he spotted O'Kelly heading toward Tara like a missile. He quickly turned away from the chat and walked over to Tara. Just as Handy was about to hug Tara, Marvin stepped in between them. He put his arm around Handy and smiled widely. "Are you trying to take my date, Patrick? You won't be the first or the last to do that." Tara played along by gently placing her hand on Marvin's shoulder and said to Handy, "Yes, I did well when I convinced Marvin to come with me. He wouldn't have been here tonight if I hadn't promised to dance with him all night. He knows how to make a deal, doesn't he?" Hearing this, Handy replied, "Have a nice evening," and walked away. Tara leaned in and whispered, "I owe you a lot." He replied, "Being here with you is more than enough for me. Shall we sit and eat?" Their table of 8 was the busiest at the event. Marvin was in his element, telling stories, telling jokes, and laughing. It was the most fun he had since Cheryl left their home, and maybe even their marriage. When the band played the first song, he waved for Tara to join him on the dance floor. She smiled and took his hand as she stood up. They danced to a few fast songs, and when a slow song started, they moved together. Tara looked at him and said, "I know how you feel. I was there 2 years ago, but my life has improved. I had friends who supported me through tough times. Can I be one of your friends who helps you heal?" He leaned his forehead against hers and nodded because he couldn't find the words. They spent the rest of the evening dancing, laughing, and enjoying themselves. When the party ended at 11 p.m., she asked Marvin if he would take her for a ride in the convertible with the top down. She wanted to feel the cool air in her hair and wrap her arms around Marvin to warm her heart. She asked him to walk her to the door, and he happily agreed. Marvin smiled and said, "I haven't had this much fun in a long time. I can't tell if it's because of you or because of my 200 friends around us. Can I take you out for dinner next week? It's cheaper than feeding 200 people." She laughed and said, "I don't know anyone who can make me laugh with such a simple question. Because of that, I agree. Let's go out Friday night." She hugged him longer than he thought she would, pulled back, gave him a quick kiss, and then went inside. Marvin put the roof down and drove home, feeling warmth in his heart. Cheryl had gone out with her friend Patty to enjoy some fun. Patty had been divorced for several years and knew how to enjoy life. She saw that Cheryl was pretty and fresh enough to catch some guy's attention. That night, as they walked in, several guys noticed and approached to ask Patty who her friend was. After they introduced themselves, Tim, Dan, and Harvey bought drinks for the girls, saying that dancing would start soon. Tim and Cheryl got on stage for some upbeat songs. When a slow song played, Cheryl felt unsure about how close they should be. But Tim knew what to do. It had been a long time since other men had been this near to her. She reminded herself that she liked being out and meeting new men, even if she didn't know what they wanted. As the night went on, she talked to several men who asked for her number. This made her feel good. It reminded her that she was still attractive to men. She felt she could choose who she wanted to be with. By the end of the night, both she and Patty went home alone. On Wednesday of the next week, some of Cheryl's co-workers brought her the morning paper from the office. The main story was about Tara Wilson, who helped make a children's charity event a success. The article had pictures of Tara and a man next to her. The women wondered quietly if that man was Cheryl's husband, who was now separated from her, and if he was dancing with Tara. Cheryl stared at the picture of her husband, still shocked. The other women waited for her reaction. She quietly said, "Yes, that's him." On Thursday, Cheryl went to Betty's travel agency and asked for a favor. I really need to talk to Marvin. Can you call him and ask him to talk to me? I'm not lonely or sad. I just wish my kids would talk to me. Betty replied, I won't get involved in your personal life. I'll call Marvin and see if he'll talk to you. If he agrees, I'll let you know. If not, I won't push it. Do you have any questions? Cheryl said, No questions. Thank you for helping me. Betty called Marvin and asked if he wanted to talk to Cheryl. He answered, Not really, but maybe I should. You can put her on the phone. Feeling stuck, Betty passed the phone to Cheryl, who said, Good morning, Marvin. I hope you're well. He replied, Yes. What do you want, Cheryl? She asked, Can we meet and talk? I really need to see you. It's hard to discuss things over the phone. He responded, So, we're breaking one of your rules. You can reach out to me, but I can't contact you. Is that how it is now? She pleaded, Please, Marvin. After a pause, he said, Fine. Let's meet for lunch today, somewhere we don't usually go so people don't think we're together. Cheryl suggested, I can make lunch at my house. He quickly replied, No way. I don't want to go to your home. Let's meet at Alberto's restaurant, just off the freeway. I'll be there at noon. Anything else? Thank you so much, Marvin, she said after he hung up the phone. When they arrived at Alberto's, Marvin saw Cheryl sitting in a corner booth. As he walked over, she stood up, opened her arms, and hugged him. It felt awkward. He stood there with his arms hanging down while she embraced him. She tried to start the conversation lightly. You look very fit, she said. Cooking must be good for you. It's not my cooking, he answered flatly. Every other night, a woman brings me food and checks on me. One night, 3 ladies came at the same time to bring me home-cooked meals. The local women are very good at feeding me. Cheryl frowned at this and asked, Is that woman married to Falco? One of those ladies? She always admired you when she was with us. With a grin, he replied, Yes, she was one of the first to visit, and I have to say she makes the best lasagna I've ever had. You're welcome to invite her over any time. Cheryl bit her lip and changed the subject. Marvin, I know I've let the kids down, and they don't understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, but I really miss talking to them. None of them have reached out to me in weeks. Did you tell them not to talk to me when they were here? I told them you're still their mother and they should respect you, he answered. She quickly responded, They came to see you, not me. It hurts my heart. He snapped back, Yes, that seems to happen a lot. He stared at her for a moment while she looked at the table. Finally, he said, I'll call them this week and ask them to call you. I won't force them, but I'll ask. Just so you know, they might say some things that could upset you, so be ready, he added. Cheryl frowned again, feeling nervous. So she moved on to another topic. I saw your picture in the paper with Tara Wilson. Are you two dating? He replied. She didn't have anyone to go with to the charity dinner, so she asked me to be her date. I haven't had that much fun in a long time. She's a very pretty woman. She asked you? She questioned. Yes. Hard to believe such a beautiful, smart girl would ask me out, right? He looked her in the eye, but inside he felt a strong lump in his throat. Marvin, I'm in a tough spot financially. I haven't planned for some expenses, and I'm a bit short on money. I know you've always helped me keep my bills paid and my good credit. But with paying bills, new health insurance, moving costs, and all that, I need some help. Could I borrow $2,000 from you? I promise I'll pay you back. He didn't say a word. Instead, he gave her a frustrated and annoyed look. Slowly, he reached for his checkbook, wrote her a check, and pushed it across the table. Thank you very much, she said. I'm really embarrassed to ask you for this. I wanted to become a more independent woman, but that hasn't happened yet. Are we done? He asked. Just one more question, Cheryl replied. Can you tell me about the trip to France that Betty and Cindy said you planned? Marvin sighed. What's there to say? I planned the trip for us so you could go to France. I knew it was something you always wanted. I had the papers with me when you told me you were leaving. I canceled the trip since it seems like you are no longer in my life. Cheryl tried not to cry. This is the kindest thing any man has ever done for me. You are really a caring husband, and I love you for that. Please remember I am not leaving you when we are back together. I will spend my life making it up to you, he said. Are we done? He asked again. When Cheryl nodded, Marvin got up, paid the bill, and left. Later that afternoon, Marvin called Tara to see if she wanted to go out with him on Friday night. Tara said, Yes, I'm free, and I'm looking forward to it. What do you want to do that night? Asked Marvin. Since your junior college baseball games are on Friday and the weather will be nice, I thought we could go to the game, eat some food in the park, and watch the games. How does that sound?" Tara replied, "That sounds fun. Do you want me to get 2 seats in the faculty box?" He said, "No, that would feel like work for you. I'll pick you up at 4 p.m., and we can get our seats when we get there." "Great, see you then." Marvin found some good seats on the third base side of the field. When they arrived, they got a soda and popcorn. While they started eating the popcorn, Marvin asked, "I was taking a chance asking you about the baseball game. I wasn't sure if you liked sports." Tara smiled and said, "I love all sports. I played softball in high school and a little in college. Tonight is perfect for it. I've been here for 2 years and have never been to a game. Thanks for thinking of it." "Does your son like sports too?" he asked. "He plays sports but is thinking about trying golf. But it's hard to manage with my job," Tara replied. Marvin thought for a moment and said, "Our country club has a summer program for young golfers that is really good. It's 5 hours on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. The first hour is lessons. In the second hour, they play a few holes, and at noon, they get hot dogs and hamburgers. After lunch, they swim until their parents come." "That sounds perfect for him. But how much does it cost?" Tara asked. "The only cost is for his food. The club wants to make it so much fun for the kids that they'll get their parents to join the club. You don't have to be a member now. I can help you until you decide if you want to join. If you want to know, I can share the details." Tara smiled and said, "That would be awesome. I appreciate you thinking of him and me." The rest of the afternoon and evening flew by as we watched 2 exciting baseball games and munched on hot popcorn. They giggled and chatted like teenagers getting to know one another. As I mentioned, he had brought a blanket. It was not just to stay warm, but to have a reason to get close to Tara. She seemed okay with it. The night ended with a hug, a quick kiss, and a promise to meet again next week, week 10. On Sunday, the golf course at the country club was closed for the first golf tournament of the spring. This was a scramble tournament where every player takes a shot, and then the team picks the best one out of 4 tries. The golf pro makes teams based on skill levels, naming them A, B, C, and D players. Marvin was a B player and was shocked to see Greta Gustafson listed as an A player. Greta had been playing on the LPGA Tour for about 10 years. In that time, she was one of the most photographed players, not just for her game, but for her looks. She was 5 feet 5 inches tall with long blonde hair. She had a figure that looked great in shorts and snug golf shirts. She was from Sweden, and her voice was soft and sweet. She used her winnings and money from sponsors to buy the biggest insurance agency in town. After they said hello, the 4 players got into their carts and drove to the first hole. Marvin felt thrilled that Greta was on his team. He said to her, "We haven't met before, but I've seen you here many times." Greta smiled and said, "I know you. You gave the president's report at the annual meetings. It's nice to meet you." The player labeled D went first, then player B. Finally, as Greta bent over to place her club in the ground, Marvin could see why everyone admired her. She had such a lovely figure. When she swung, her long arms moved powerfully, sending the ball flying 250 yards straight down the fairway with a loud whoosh. Greta smiled as she put her club back in her bag and climbed into the cart. Marvin complimented her in Swedish, saying, "That was very good." At this, Greta looked surprised. She asked, "Do you speak Swedish?" He smiled and answered, "Yes," in Swedish, and then added in English, "But that's about all I know." Both of his parents had families who came from Sweden in 1868, which explains his last name, Jönsson. With a beautiful smile, she said, "I can't wait for our game tonight. You're the first person in this town who knows anything about Sweden." The next 17 holes were filled with laughter, jokes, and conversations about Swedish traditions. Their laughter filled the air as they sang fun Swedish children's songs. Marvin remembered the words his grandmother taught him, but he didn't really know what they meant, which made them even more amusing. Thanks to Greta's long shots and Marvin's nice swings, the 4 of them won first prize, $100 each to spend on shirts, pants, and golf gear. Greta smiled at Marvin and said, "Playing golf with you is even better than winning. We should do this again." Grinning, he nodded and replied, "Sure. How about you come over here Wednesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon? I'll treat you to dinner. It will be cheaper for me than giving you $1 for each point we missed." Weeks later, Cheryl first told her friends that she would not attend their 25th graduation reunion. She felt scared because of threats she had heard about. But her friends encouraged her, so she finally agreed to go. They knew she was having a hard time dealing with Marvin and accepting herself as a modern woman. They wanted to support her in her tough time and help her feel more like herself again. Cheryl was thankful for the 3-hour drive to Dallas. It gave her a chance to relax from work and life's troubles. She thought about the young women she had gone to college with and how their lives had changed. It would be nice to catch up with these old friends. They had rented a special place for their reunion, which had 6 big bedrooms, a kitchen, and a big meeting room with comfy chairs instead of tables. Each bedroom was separate, giving everyone their own space and private bathroom. Outside, there was a patio and a hot tub that looked over the golf course. Friday was meant for traveling and getting together. They planned to eat sushi for dinner and then have a pajama party at their rental home. Cheryl took the day off so she could get there by 5 o'clock that evening. She heard laughter and cheers as she arrived, which meant her friends were already there. When she walked through the door, everyone cheered happily that she had finally come. Many of the women had started drinking, shown by the many bottles on the counter. The Uber ride to and from the sushi restaurant was loud and messy, with everyone giggling. They were all told to change into their pajamas and gather in the main area. After having some margaritas from the blender in the kitchen, each woman shared stories about her job, kids, marriage, and relationships. There were happy stories, sad stories, and some that went on forever. Cheryl was one of the 3 women who didn't have a clear ending to her story yet. They all sensed that great or awful things could happen to these 3. More than half of the women had been divorced at least once. Most of them told Cheryl that she was on the right path. They said she should take charge of her marriage and let her husband know how she felt. He should just go along with it or accept it. It's his choice, but it would be better for him to make his wife happy and stop complaining. The girls cheered for Cheryl. They admired how she stood up to her husband and told him she was moving out for 6 months. They thought she was strong and independent. They liked that she wanted to live alone and not feel tied down by her marriage. They felt sad when she shared that Marvin had started divorce papers and was trying to change his life for another woman. Cheryl talked about Marvin's date with the young and pretty Tara Wilson. She mentioned how he got rid of his Honda and bought a BMW convertible, trying to show he was serious. The other girls, who usually talked tough, softened their advice about fixing things with their husbands. Many women said that after their divorces, their ex-husbands married younger women, while they ended up with older men. They all agreed it was best to be careful and not push him into a decision. Cheryl didn't want that. After staying out late, they didn't start their shopping trip until 11 a.m. They planned to eat lunch in the store until 4 p.m., then go back to their retreat to relax for the rest of the afternoon and evening. They had a reservation at an Italian restaurant and wanted to go out dancing afterward. Each woman was asked to wear her best dress and bring $20 to put into a margarita blender. The woman who caught the best man would win $240. The dinner was great, but the real fun was the contest. When they got to the club, they found out they couldn't get one table for 12 people, so they had to split into 2 tables of 6. This made it easier for the men to ask them to dance. Cheryl had fun dancing with 5 different men. Each one was charming and enjoyable. This was exactly how she had hoped her life would be after leaving Marvin. The 6th man who approached her felt very different. Just looking at him made Cheryl feel nervous, but she got up to dance with him right away. He was tall, had a strong build, and seemed very polished. He spoke to her softly, not noticing the chaos around them. After a few fast and slow songs, he asked if she was tired and wanted to sit down. She responded, "I'll go back to the table if you come with me. Otherwise, I'll stay here with you." He replied, "That's the nicest thing I've heard all night. Your table seems quite loud. Would you like to join me at my table? This is my son and a few of his college friends. I'm sure we'll have time to talk since the boys are busy chatting up girls tonight." She laughed and said, "That sounds like fun." Cheryl learned that his name was Ted, and he worked as an airline broker in Dallas. He was visiting his son, who was doing a summer internship there. His office was in Seattle, but he traveled everywhere to sell new and used airplanes. Suddenly, everything clicked in her mind. If she wanted to have fun with a real man, it would be Ted. She found it hard to meet guys in her town who didn't know Marvin. Now she met a man from Seattle in Dallas who had a son named Matt. He didn't know Marvin and had no connections. She planned not to tell Ted her real name so he couldn't trace her. It was the perfect plan. She could enjoy herself with him, and Marvin would never find out. Her husband said something about basketball. No harm, no foul. Since Ted wouldn't know about her fun, that meant there would be no harm. And so, no foul. Her table became the party spot where young men and women stopped to sit, drink, laugh, and enjoy. Now that Cheryl figured out how to have fun without Marvin knowing, she felt relaxed and had a great time. Ted turned to his son and said, "Take a picture of this. I want to remember it forever." Ted then said, "I think we need to move this somewhere else before we get in trouble. But first, I have 2 questions for you. What's your name?" "CJ," she replied. "Are you married?" he asked. "Not anymore," she said. "My husband divorced me." Then she asked, "Where are you staying?" He answered, "At the Embassy Suites about a mile away. I'll ask my son to find another room for the night since mine will be busy." Hearing that, Cheryl took Ted by the arm and led him towards her friend's table. She said, "Ted and I are leaving. I'll see you tomorrow morning when I pick up the money for helping people." To be safe, she made Ted show her friends his driver's license, just in case he wasn't who he seemed to be. As she wrapped her arms around Ted, her worries about cheating on Marvin faded away. When they got to his hotel room, she quickly locked the door and pulled him close. They walked to the bedroom, and she led him to a soft chair by the bed. After their time together, Ted took Cheryl back to her friend's house. Her curious friends wanted to know all the details. After lunch, the ladies started to head home to their husbands, partners, or empty apartments. They agreed to hang out more often and were especially eager to hear about Cheryl's future adventures. Week 13. On Sunday afternoon, Marvin picked up Tara and Sean and took them to his country club. After a late breakfast, he showed them the golf store, the golf course, the driving range, and the snack bar. Marvin had an old set of golf clubs that his son used when he was younger. Sean would keep the clubs in the store for when he came to play. The most important thing was that Marvin gave Sean his club number. This way, Sean could order sodas and fries for himself and his new friends at the pool. The next Tuesday was the first day of the Young Golfer Summer Program. Sean was smiling the whole time. He was worried about having a boring summer, but with golf lessons, playing golf, and swimming 3 days a week, he was really happy. This also made Tara, his mother, happy, and it was nice for Marvin, too. In the evening, she cooked dinner for the 3 of them. After Sean went to bed, Tara cuddled up to Marvin and thanked him for bringing Sean to the golf group. She said, "He is really happy. I know you've been a great father." Marvin replied sadly, "You'll have to ask someone else about that. After the last 3 months, I don't know if I did right or wrong." He continued, "My world is upside down. My head is spinning." Tara hugged him and said, "I'm here for you. I've been through this before. After the fog comes clarity, I promise. Just keep doing what you're doing. You'll feel better no matter what happens." They spent some quiet time together, hugging and talking. On June 15th, Marvin and Cheryl knew it was their 25th anniversary. They both thought about sending a card, but decided not to. They had marked 13 weeks on their calendars for this day. It was the end of Cheryl's 6-month journey of finding herself. Today was the day to decide if they would come back together as husband and wife or agree to end their marriage. Cheryl was still recovering from her trip to Dallas. Her friends had supported her in her choices. Her time with Ted had been exciting, but she knew she needed to keep that part of her life a secret. She didn't want her husband to find out and push for a divorce, especially not now. She didn't really want a divorce. She just wanted things to change. She wanted the freedom to do what she liked, but still have Marvin as her home to return to. It felt like the perfect plan. However, Marvin would be hurt by the truth, and she hated being dishonest to him after 25 years of marriage. Marvin just needed to relax about everything. On Wednesday, he played golf with Greta. Thanks to the lessons from the club and Greta's tips, he improved his score by 6 strokes. He enjoyed her company, and being outside on a lovely afternoon felt special. While they took the game seriously, they also shared easy and personal conversations. After their game, he invited her to play with him on Friday night at the couples club. He said that most of the people who play are married couples, but there are also single people who go for just 9 holes of golf, followed by dinner and some prizes. She replied that she would love to join. On Friday night, a group of women came together at the country club for drinks and dinner. Cheryl had been part of this group for many years. However, since her divorce from Marvin, she could no longer go to the club. Her friend Betty asked if she could come along. At first, Cheryl was unsure, but then she thought a modern woman shouldn't be afraid to be in the same place as her ex-husband. They were not enemies, just 2 people who had grown apart for a while. They usually sat on the patio above the 9th green for their Friday night get-togethers. They had that spot because their group was known for being loud and cheerful. It was a lovely evening, and the drinks kept flowing. Cheryl felt happy to be back with her friends and looked around, recalling memories of the time she and Marvin shared there. Then she spotted him. Her husband was walking beside a moving golf cart toward his ball. He looked good, fit with a confident walk. From where the ball was, it seemed he had already taken 2 shots on the par 5 hole. He swung his club and the ball flew straight toward the hole, rolling in smoothly. "Eagle!" Cheryl shouted to the other women. She felt excited for her husband and jumped to congratulate him, but then her stomach dropped. A tall, blonde woman jumped out of the cart and ran to Marvin. He turned to her, and she wrapped her arms around him, giving him a quick kiss. They didn't care who was watching. They didn't hear the cheers or jokes from the people around them. The 2 golfers hugged and walked to their cart. The ladies at the table gasped when they saw what Cheryl had witnessed. Cheryl grabbed her purse and ran to the car, where she burst into tears. Another beautiful woman was with Marvin. Marvin had to wait for Cheryl to decide how soon she would come back home. It should have been her choice, not his. He wanted to trade places with her, but it saddened her to think she felt like she was the one being swapped out. Week 14, Diane Marcos set up a meeting for Cheryl and Marvin with a mediator. They hadn't seen or talked to each other since their lunch 5 weeks earlier. They arrived at Diane's office at the same time. As Marvin turned off his BMW, Cheryl complimented him on the nice car and asked if he would take her for a ride after their meeting. Stepping out of the car, he said, "I'm sorry, but I have a golf game later. Plus, we're not supposed to talk to each other." Cheryl responded, "I'm looking forward to our meeting today. I hope we can sort things out and be a couple again." He smiled and said, "Yes, me too. But with you moving, any chance of getting back together will be tough." Diane welcomed them into her office with a smile. "I'm really happy to see you both talking. This is a good start to fixing things between you. After our last meeting, I mentioned that today would be a chance for both of you to share your feelings. You can talk openly and find some common ground. From our first meeting, I could tell you both care for each other. You both want to stay married. But there is one big issue. Cheryl wants to have experiences with other men, not just Marvin. This really upsets Marvin, and he said he would end the marriage if Cheryl is not loyal. Do we all agree that this is the main problem?" They both nodded yes. Diane then turned to Cheryl and asked if she wanted to speak first. "Yes, I want to start," Cheryl said. "Marvin, I truly love and respect you. I want us to be together forever. But I feel like I haven't experienced enough in life. I've read that being physical with someone is not the same as being close to them. You can be physical with someone without love. It's just a body thing, like a handshake or a hug." She went on, "Being close with someone means you share a deep emotional bond. We have that. I care about you and you care about me. Feeling worried about sharing me with other men is like getting the flu. It's not fun, but you can get over it. It happened, you dealt with it, and you moved on." Cheryl took a breath and continued, "I feel like I need to explore this to become more of a woman to you, not just a wife. I hope you can understand my feelings." Marvin took a deep breath. "I find it strange that you say you respect me as your husband, but then you suggest doing something that seems disrespectful. It hurts my feelings deeply." With anger in his voice, he added, "You think I can just get over it? That shows a lack of understanding about how men feel. For a long time, men have felt that they don't want other men being with their partners. It's part of human nature. If we look back in history, you can see this is how men have always felt. There are 2 words that upset both men and women. Cheryl, I want you to stay my wife, but I will not join you in your experiences with others. I simply won't allow it. You will have your thoughts and I will have mine." Cheryl shook her head. "But Marvin, it won't be like that. I promise." Marvin did not look convinced by her weak promise. Diane finished the meeting and encouraged both of them to keep an open mind and think of some compromises they could find. Week 15 of summer was here, and Marvin played golf with Greta every Wednesday afternoon. Usually it was just the two of them, but sometimes they had clients join them. Greta played for insurance, while Marvin focused on investments. After the golf game, Marvin often invited Greta to his house for a steak and salad dinner, which she always accepted happily. One evening, after dinner on the back patio, Marvin said, "I need to share my feelings about my marriage with you. We had a required meeting last week, and we haven't made any progress since I filed for divorce. You know the rules I mentioned." Then he added, "I feel like we have a close bond, and I really like you. I want to keep our friendship strong. But I have promised not to be intimate with anyone until my marriage is officially over. It would be wrong of me to leave Cheryl for cheating if I am doing the same thing with you. I'm not sure if you want to move our relationship forward, but I want you to understand why I haven't tried to take it further." "I hope I wasn't too bold thinking you might be interested in me," he said. Greta laughed and replied, "Not at all. I really enjoy our time together. Marvin, I feel like you are my best friend in this town. I'm happy with how things are now. It's important for you to focus on your situation with Cheryl until the end of summer before making any changes." The next day, Marvin asked Tara if she would go to an outdoor concert with him on Saturday night, and she said yes. Greta was with her LPGA friends in Atlanta that weekend, so Tara and Marvin drove around town in Marvin's fun BMW convertible one lovely summer evening. "I have to tell you, Marvin, you make my life and my son's life so wonderful this summer," Tara said. "Sean loves the junior golf program. He's made many friends, and I now have a great friend in you. I'm having so much fun this summer. I wish summer would never end." Marvin responded, "I'm afraid it will end with a bang. Cheryl's project ends at the end of August, and we'll have to decide what happens next. Earlier this week, we had another meeting with our counselor. I shared my thoughts. She shared hers. Neither of us changed our minds. Now, there's something I hope I'm not overstepping by saying. We have grown close this summer, and I really enjoy being with you and with the three of us together." He continued, "Normally by now, couples either get closer or drift apart. I'm not seeing anyone else. How can I divorce Cheryl for cheating if I'm being unfaithful myself? That's why I haven't been intimate for the past 15 weeks. Tara laughed and said, "I'm really proud of you. I was scared you would do something rash for revenge and that it might mess up your life. I get where you're coming from because I have felt the same way before. I thought that's what you were planning. I wonder what will happen in your life this fall." She asked me something. "Since we are talking about it, does the no-sex rule include Greta? I don't want to seem pushy or too clingy, but I know you're with her a lot, and I hope she's not just a second choice. My ex-husband had a girlfriend, and it really hurt when he picked her over me. I hope you see where I'm coming from." He held her hand and said, "You don't have to worry about me waiting. Greta and I are good friends, and we have fun together. Most of our time is spent talking about golf or work. She's okay with the no-sex rule because she doesn't want to start a relationship without knowing where it might go. Please don't worry. You mean a lot to me, and I don't want to hurt you." Week 16, Week 17. Summer was slowly turning into fall. Marvin played golf with Greta every Wednesday and spent one evening each week with her. He also spent most of his time with Tara and her son, Sean, which worked for everyone. Week 18. Greta skipped the country club event on July 4th because she went to Atlanta to play golf and meet friends. Marvin invited Tara and Sean to watch fireworks at the golf course. Sean hung out with his friends while they sat in lawn chairs, sipping drinks and enjoying the night. Tara saw him looking off towards his old house. She touched his arm and smiled when he looked at her. They nodded at each other. No one asked Cheryl out that night, so she drove to the country club and parked a block away to watch the fireworks. The cars on both sides of the road made it hard for her to turn around. She didn't want to drive down the street since she used to live there. She saw club members walking to their cars and homes. She noticed Marvin and Tara walking with a boy near where her house used to be. Not wanting to seem like a stalker, she sat and sniffled until the Johnsons went inside. Week 19. Cheryl went out dancing 2 times a week. She laughed, had drinks, and enjoyed herself. She kept her dignity, and no one could say she was doing anything wrong with her new friends. She liked to tease and have men chase after her. There was always a chance Marvin was being watched by someone who could prove he wasn't faithful. She still didn't know how he heard about Roberto. Luckily, they had just been flirting. She called Ted and asked him to let her know when he was near her house. Ted told her he would be in Dallas the next weekend. Cheryl suggested they meet halfway, and he quickly agreed. Cheryl still thought Marvin might know Roberto. To be safe, she rented a car. She wanted to make sure Marvin didn't put a device in her car to track her. She also didn't use her favorite purse because it could have a hidden device too. When she called Ted, she didn't use her cell phone. Instead, she used a phone that someone left at a Walmart. Once again, she was smarter than Marvin. They planned to meet at a bar close to the hotel for some drinks before going to their room. Ted raised his glass to welcome his friend with a drink of Macallan whiskey. After 2 drinks, they were ready to go to the hotel. Cheryl walked down the hall with a smiling Ted right behind her. Meanwhile, Robbie was working as a summer intern at a big factory in Nashville. His internship would finish in 4 weeks, and he was learning a lot. The people he met would help him find a real job after he graduated. Robbie was making friends with another intern named Matt. At the start of summer, Matt and Robbie were roommates during the first week. After that, Matt was sent to Dallas. This week, Matt was back in Nashville for a meeting and stayed with Robbie again. Matt's dad was also in town and wanted to take the 2 young men out for dinner. When Matt's dad arrived, he introduced Robbie to Ted. They shook hands and went to the steakhouse. After dinner, they had to decide what to do for the evening. Robbie and Matt wanted to go to a club to drink and dance. Even though Ted knew he would pay for it, he agreed to go with them. After an hour at a club near the airport, Matt told his dad, "This place is so boring compared to the club we went to in Dallas." Ted replied, "That was a crazy night." "What happened?" Robbie asked. Matt laughed and said, "Dad almost got in trouble at our table a couple of months ago. A woman his age wanted him really badly." "She took you back to the hotel, didn't she, Dad?" Matt said, teasing. "Matt, you should be nicer," Ted said. "She was a lovely person. I had a nice time with her. She wasn't bad. She was just out with her friends for her 25th school reunion. She was going through a divorce and just wanted some attention." Robbie noticed too many things matched. He started to think hard. "What was her name?" he asked. Ted looked confused and replied, "CJ, why?" Robbie thought to himself. "CJ are the same initials as my mom, Cheryl Johnson. My mom was in Dallas for her 25th reunion 2 months ago. She and Dad are probably finalizing their divorce soon. Can you tell me what she looked like?" Robbie asked. Matt took out his phone and called up a picture of Cheryl and Ted kissing. He kept the other pictures out of Robbie's view. He handed the phone to Robbie. 2 seconds later, Robbie recognized his mother kissing the man sitting right in front of him. Out of habit, he ran his thumb over the next photo. Just as Matt wanted to grab his phone, he said, "I don't think that's a good idea, Robbie." Robbie looked back and replied, "It's not about me. Dad needs to know what happened. They need to decide if they want to fix their marriage or get divorced. He has to know." Matt pulled his hand away, and Robbie saw a photo of his mom too close with Ted at a club. Ted quickly spoke. "Robbie, she told me she was single. I don't do that with married women. I got hurt badly when other men were with my ex-wife. I wouldn't disrespect another man like that." Robbie nodded, thankful. He then turned to Matt and asked him to send the pictures to him. After that, Robbie said to Ted, "I should head out now. Thanks for dinner and drinks. Goodbye." In week 21, Greta called Marvin and asked him to cook her a steak at his house after golf on Wednesday. He happily said yes. After enjoying a great steak, red wine, and dessert, Greta asked him to sit beside her on the couch. Marvin felt uneasy. Maybe she had changed her mind after their talk last week. Greta started to say, "You know, I really like spending time with you. We've grown close, and I want to ask you something that might be hard for us." Marvin felt a lump in his throat. "After being with you for 5 months, I have realized you are one of the most honest and clever people I know. Your work is smart and makes money, and you help your clients and your company together. I admire what you have done. I also know you'll want to slow down one day. Your kids might not want to take over your company, and I wouldn't want to see a good local business sold to a bigger chain. Because of this, Marvin, I want you to think about merging our companies. Our companies work well together. My company is strong in the market, just like yours. If we join forces, I will bring new clients to you, and you will get mine. By the time you're ready to retire, I can run the company and be the president. Then I can buy your half, and you can retire or work part-time. I know you have a big choice to make soon, but I wanted to talk about this before you decide. You don't have to choose right now. Just think about it. We can take our time and figure it out together." Marvin felt relieved and said, "I was so worried you would say you didn't want me around anymore. Instead of bad news, I got a great offer. I really like your idea. I was hoping Robbie would come back and join the business." After everything that happened this summer, he is sure about wanting to study engineering. "I noticed how we could connect companies when we worked with shared clients this summer. It felt good to do that. I'm happy you mentioned it because I was really impressed with your business skills and hard work. I hope to pass down my family's business to you one day." Week 22. After a lot of pain, Robbie called Cindy to tell her about their mother's unfaithfulness. He sent her a picture of Cheryl kissing Ted. Cindy replied, "I don't think that kiss really counts as being unfaithful, but you do have Ted's word that they were physical." Then Robbie sent her a photo of their mother with Ted. "I didn't want to share that awful photo, but between what Ted told me and this picture, there's no doubt about what she was doing," Robbie said. After some time to calm down, Cindy was shocked by the picture and became very angry, calling her mother many harsh names. While crying, she said, "Can you imagine what this will do to Daddy? He devoted his life to that selfish woman, and look how she treated him. It's awful. How are we going to tell Daddy?" Robbie, being the oldest, said, "I know. Do you want to tell him? Or should I? I already talked to Ted." "Let's do it together," she replied. "We should tell him in person, not on the phone. He will need us. Our family has to stick together." Week 23. Marvin was surprised when Cindy called to say she and Robbie would come to see him the next weekend. He was happy because he missed them, especially since this summer was the first time Robbie had been away from home. But that happiness quickly faded when they showed him what Cheryl had been doing in Dallas with her friends for her 25th birthday. Marvin's voice was calm, but his face was pale. He said softly, "I knew this day would come, and I didn't want to know for sure. She was so excited about everything that, in my mind, I knew it would happen. But in my heart, I hoped it wouldn't. I didn't hire anyone to follow her because I didn't really want to know, but deep down, I needed to. I would hate for you to see that picture. She was a good mom and a good wife. It's sad that she lost her way. This shows that the saying, 'absence makes the heart grow fonder,' isn't always true. The longer I live without her, the less I want her back." Marvin decided to get a divorce and wanted to spend the rest of the weekend enjoying time with his kids. They didn't want to talk to their mother because they didn't want to see her. Their laughter felt forced, but it was nice to be with their father. Cheryl felt proud that Marvin was not the kind of man who cried and complained, but she knew he had more than 6 months to get ready for this moment. In weeks 24 and 25, Cheryl was preparing to move back in with Marvin. She packed clothes she wouldn't wear for a while, like a fancy dress she called her God's son dress. She believed Marvin had no real reason to end their marriage because of cheating. Cheryl was excited to leave behind her 6-month trial of living alone. She wanted to return to Marvin's big, lovely house instead of the small place where she felt stuck. She missed being known as Mrs. Marvin Johnson in their city. She had forgotten how much she enjoyed going to elegant dinners in her new dress and sitting at the best table. She longed for the fun 4th of July party at the country club. Her friends had slowly stopped calling her for coffee or lunch at the club. Going to the club was not as exciting as she hoped. She danced and flirted with a few men, but there was no real connection. These guys only wanted to have fun with her, and not in a serious way. They wanted to hang out in the bathroom or parking lot right then and there. That was not what she truly wanted. But as she watched other divorced women being approached by men at the club, she realized she didn't want to be like them. Ted seemed different, like the kind of person she dreamed of being with. Maybe she could sneak off for a weekend with him every few months without Marvin knowing. Still, she was hopeful about getting back with Marvin. It felt strange that none of her kids had called her in weeks. She tried reaching out to them, but the calls always ended suddenly. The same thing happened when she tried to call Ted. The calls just dropped. Her texts and emails went unanswered. The only calls she received were from men at the club who just wanted one thing. She thought maybe it was time to get a new phone. In week 26, Marvin asked his lawyer to contact Cheryl's lawyer. He wanted them to meet at his office at 1 p.m. to make a final decision about the divorce. He requested two things: a current STD test and that both Marvin and Cheryl sign the divorce papers at the start of the meeting. If they chose to stay together, they would tear up the divorce papers and get back together. The lawyer planned to bring champagne and 4 glasses to celebrate. Cheryl felt angry at the idea that she had to take an STD test like some loose woman. It upset her to think about going to a clinic where she knew some staff members. She hoped she was healthy. On the day of the meeting, Cheryl took extra time to put on her makeup. She bought a new fancy dress for the occasion. She was eager to be Marvin's wife again and realized just how much she missed him. She arrived first at the lawyer's office, followed by her lawyer. Marvin was the last to get there. He put a bright red envelope on the desk and said sorry for being late. Cheryl's heart raced. She thought Marvin was going to talk about their trip to Paris. She dreamed they could have their second honeymoon there. They had both shared medical checks and everything was fine. Cheryl let out a sigh of relief. They both signed the divorce papers. Then Marvin asked Cheryl if she wanted to say anything. She began to speak. "It's been a long 6 months without you. But through hard times, I've learned to grow. I am now a stronger woman and more committed to our marriage than before. I want to thank my husband for helping me find my way. Marvin, I will always show you my love for the rest of my life." Now it was Marvin's turn. He said, "Faith means trusting someone. Marriage vows talk about being true to each other. Without trust, there is no love. And that brings us to this divorce. I want us to stay true to each other. During the past 6 months, I have spent time with other women, but I haven't spoken to anyone in that time. Cheryl, have you been true to me?" Cheryl was taken aback by his serious tone. She answered, "Yes, I have been true to you." Marvin frowned at her answer. Cheryl noticed and felt worried. He took the red envelope and showed her a picture of her kissing someone named Ted. He asked, "Have you been true?" She stumbled over her words and finally said, "It was just a kiss. It didn't mean anything." He showed her another inappropriate picture. "This is what being true means." Cheryl felt overwhelmed. Her lawyer told her to stay quiet, but she asked, "Where did you get this picture? Were you following me?" "My dress got pulled up when I tripped and fell next to a guy," she tried to explain. He replied firmly, "This is the worst situation I have ever faced. Someone took this picture of you. A friend of our son's saw it in Dallas. Our son found out when he and his dad laughed about the woman who kissed Ted at the club." They showed him the picture. Cheryl's face turned pale and tears came to her eyes. Marvin shouted, "Think about how our son felt seeing his mom in a club trying to flirt with another man. He sat there looking at a picture that embarrassed his father and made you look bad. Can you see why the kids don't call you?" He turned to his lawyer and handed him both signed copies of the papers, saying, "Please file them, Marvin. The physical part of things didn't mean anything to me. It didn't mean anything to Ted either. It was just something we did with our bodies. There was no love, no promise," he said firmly. "That's even worse, Cheryl," he said. "You think your time with Ted doesn't matter to you, but it means everything to me. That's really hurtful. It's the worst thing you could say." Cheryl slid down to the floor, crying and mumbling. She felt too weak to stand or leave. Even when the lawyer tried to help her up, she kept saying, "No, no, no, I want to be your wife again. Please forgive me. I promise to be loyal forever. Please don't do this to me. I don't want to be divorced like the other women. Please don't turn away from me. I'm sorry. I'll never do this again." As he walked out, he could hear her crying until he reached her BMW. Marvin decided to take the rest of the day off. He went home because he felt it was too risky to drive or be around others. He poured himself a big glass of whiskey, lit a cigar, and turned on the Frank Sinatra channel on the radio. The view from his patio was calm and peaceful. It was just what he needed. He looked at his off phone and noticed Cheryl had tried to call him every 5 minutes, so he deleted those calls. Tara and Greta also called a few times, along with Robbie and Cindy. It would all be okay in time. He thought that he expected this to happen. Cheryl had wanted out, and he saw it coming. That's why she took all her things when she left 6 months ago. He wanted her gone so he could learn to be without her. She was the woman he loved, but he felt he had lost her since last summer. He saw her anger toward their marriage grow. It didn't matter if she had cheated or not. She had left. When he spent time with Tara and Greta, they cared about him more than Cheryl did. They had been married for over 25 years. Whether it was the whiskey, the cigar, exhaustedness, or just relief, or a mix of all of that, he ended up sleeping through the afternoon and evening. He woke up to Tara softly touching him. She had a worried look and asked, "Are you okay?" He managed a weak smile and said, "Yeah, but why wouldn't I be okay?" She laughed and said, "I see you still have your sense of humor even after the divorce." He replied, "It turned out just like I thought 6 months ago. She's gone." It felt good to sit here in silence. I've been ready for this day ever since she left, even if I didn't know all the details. I knew what would happen. He wasn't surprised by it. At least he could plan for the future instead of feeling lost for a year. Tara sat down beside him, put her arm on his shoulder, and asked, "Does that future include me?" He quickly replied, "Absolutely." She leaned in and kissed him. Then she said, "As long as you have plans for me, I can wait. Don't rush into anything. You're feeling the end of a 25-year relationship. It won't be gone quickly. I will be here for you." Then she kissed him again and left. Cheryl was sure that her husband would happily take her back, so she had decided to move out at the end of the 6-month lease. Now she needed to find a new place to live because the apartment building was finished. The owners didn't give her a discount for a new place. Instead, they raised the rent by 40%. This put her in a tough spot, but she didn't ask for more money in the divorce because she believed Marvin would take her back. Plus, the house had been a gift to him from his grandparents, and his father had given him the company before they got married. The divorce papers were just for show, to make people think he wasn't weak. Diana Marco said that Cheryl didn't want to give up her right to date other men, which made Marvin want a divorce. The judge agreed with her and approved a deal that wasn't good for Cheryl. The good news was she could keep her teacher's retirement account because she had a job and no kids. No alimony was given. She didn't count on that money since she was supposed to be at Marvin's house this week. She had to move to a cheaper place, which also meant paying for moving costs and deposits again. She wished for a small house, but that would mean yard work, which her ex-husband did, and she didn't want to do those chores. Cheryl found a small apartment in a not-so-great neighborhood that fit her budget. The idea of working evenings scared her, not because of danger or trouble, but because she would feel embarrassed to be a waitress serving her old country club friends. Now her kids answer her calls, but their relationship has changed. It would take time to heal. They promised to visit her the next time they were in town. Autumn came. The trees changed colors, the days got shorter, and the nights grew colder. Cheryl felt worried, thinking, this is going to be a long, cold winter. The next morning was Saturday, and Marvin slept in. He told his Saturday golf group he wouldn't play that day. Around 10 a.m., Greta showed up at the door. She said, "I heard it was tough, but it's over." "Who told you that?" Marvin asked. Greta smiled and said, "We have the same lawyer, silly. He knows you and I are close. I even told him I would break all his golf clubs and his left arm if he didn't tell me." He laughed and hugged her. She asked, "Is it finally over?" "Yes, it's finally over," he replied. "Good. As you start making plans for your future, I want to tell you something. There's something I wanted to share with you earlier, but I didn't want to add to your worries. I had such a great time with you that I just didn't want to bring it up. Please sit with me for a moment." He paused, feeling unsure about what she might say. Greta spoke softly. "The women in town think you are very appealing. Now that your situation is getting settled, more women will take notice of you and may want to be part of your life. I know you might think about marrying again someday. If I'm lucky enough to be invited, I would tell you no because I'm already married." This caught him off guard, and he jumped up. "What? When did that happen? How?" He stumbled over his thoughts and asked, "Who is your husband and where does he live?" "My husband lives in Atlanta. We've been married for 5 years. One reason I go there often is to visit her." "Marvin, I'm a lesbian and have been for 10 years. That doesn't change my love for you as my best friend. I want you in my life. But I can't marry you. I hope we can keep the friendship we had this summer as long as Tara is okay with it. I actually want to get along better with Tara. I want her to know I'm not trying to take her man. If she is important to you, then she matters to me too. After all, we work together." She continued, "I was glad for the rule you had this summer about not being intimate. It made things easier for me. My wife doesn't want me being close with you like that. Just as you didn't want other men being close to your wife. She doesn't like the idea of me being disrespectful. I have a good friend who just divorced his wife for being with another man. Thanks for listening to One Infidelity Hit. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop us a like.